Hey folks, this is Tully and welcome to some more game dev. Today we're jumping back in and we're continuing where we left off last week pretty much. We're continuing to build out the dungeon space, kind of the chapter 1 forest area. Just gonna keep building rooms and cutscene. We gotta make more content. And I feel like I've been kind of stuck in a rut of just like trying to make things perfect. But today we're just gonna pump out a bunch of maps and add some cutscenes in there. Maybe do a little bit of refinement on some skill tree stuff and just like put pen to paper and we will find what's working and what's not working. So to start with, we're going to just kind of do a quick run through of where the game currently is at. So this is after we've already done the intro part with the Demon Lord's castle area where we steal the Omni weapon, and then we move forward through here after getting teleported down to this forest area. And I think one of my primary things I want to be thinking about today is what is the goal that the player has? Like, we have these different moments where the player can like engage with like almost little mini cutscenes where Hero is kind of hopefully giving the thoughts of the player a little bit, is the way that I'm writing it. And having it so that there's a little bit of like, oh, there's a slime here, but I don't have a weapon. I should avoid that for now. And just trying to figure out like what we want to do with like the player's expectations. I don't know, like I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but we need to do better about finding a way to communicate what is the player even trying to do. I need to remove some of those voice lines for now. So we pick up the weapon here. Right now the weapon is giving us defend and slash from an earlier prototype. I should take defend out for the time being. And then we can fight a slime. We get our first combat sequence, which is over pretty quickly, but that's kind of how I want these first few enemies to feel, is just like little road bumps that are not meant to be extremely challenging or complex in terms of the combat system. They're just like more of a simple intro to like, you know, your actions take a couple of turns to execute, and so do the enemies. And we can start leveling up our skills a little bit. And then we keep exploring. So then here we come into another section that has like another river we can't cross, so we end up going left. I don't love that this is going behind the compass here, but like, what is the player trying to do? Like, what am I trying to get the player thinking about in these moments? Like, we killed a couple slimes, we got a sword. My hope is the expectation being set up is that you need to save the adventurer who is trapped by that boar. And like, that's what some of these cutscenes are trying to hint at, is like, oh, don't go that way, go this way. And it feels all very hand-holdy. And then we get to this sequence and this is all working. We have it now where the adventurer is missing, so is the boar, but there's now another weapon here, which will eventually be replaced with the mace that Trixie was working on last week. And we get a little bit of information about if only we were quicker. And then we still have this bridge decal that I was playing with last week, kind of testing stuff, so I need to remove that. And this is kind of like the first run. We've managed to go far enough that we've seen the first little bit of a cutscene. We've failed to save the adventurer. We've got that mace, and then we can explore a little bit further. And if we keep kind of wandering around, eventually we'll run into a couple more boars. I want to maybe reduce the amount of time you have on the first run. Right now it's like 8 hours or 8 minutes. I still haven't, I don't know if I'll ever decide what exactly the time units is. Maybe I'll just leave it vague and the player can decide. But regardless, I've got like 8 units, and I feel like this could be reduced down to like something more like 5, so that you could run out of time shortly after getting the mace. But if you do move forward here, you will run into a couple of these enemies that are probably going to end up killing you. These big slimes are only doing red attacks, which are really easy to avoid. We need to take another look at their attack patterns. And if I just wait a little bit here, we will die from combat. And we finish up here with the goddess telling us that we've leveled up our weapon enough that we can increase our skills. I don't think I'm doing a good job of like communicating what you're trying to achieve. Like here we can come in and get some strength, some health, get another point of strength here, another point of defense, another 2 points of strength. No, we're out of skill points. I was talking to Drixie about this. I feel like I also have a not purchasable versus purchasable version of these icons, and I don't think those are set up correctly right now, because this looks like I should be able to buy it, or at least it looks the same. Okay. So we buy a couple of upgrades, and then we can go do another run. Health is not resetting correctly on start of the run. This should be 60. That's why we have a little bit of health missing. We bought a health upgrade for 5 points, but that didn't actually take. And then with all the upgrades here, these enemies were taking several hits, and now they're taking like 3. So the stat upgrades are making that slime fairly easy. I feel like I'm giving too much experience too quickly in the early part. And then we can interact to knock this over. The idea being that this bridge wouldn't normally be here. And then we can fight this boar and save the adventurer. And then I don't have any kind of cutscene here. I feel like I need some sort of like, thank you, adventurer, and then like a fade to black, and then fade up and the adventurer is gone. And then that cutscene should be setting your next expectation, which is, okay, now that you have the weapon, now you should go explore further, and you can skip essentially what we're like, because we're starting on this location here and then going up to that first room with the waterfall, then over to the adventurer, and before we went down to get our sword and then up and around. Now with that shortcut, we're able to just bypass like 3 of these rooms and get right to this point where we can kind of go in a couple of different directions. We can either go further to this left direction. This way, I want to add another one of those log bridges that you can knock over here. That'll give you access to another room on this side. And then I also want to add another section over here, which I think is where I'm going to have like the end of this chapter take place, but you're going to need to do some stuff throughout the forest in order for this to work. And then we don't have these maps set up yet, so it just fails to load the room because it doesn't exist yet. So that's the basic premise of like what the first run / the first little bit of the second run should be looking like. Where do we go from here? We've got a couple options. They're in the title. We can work on more rooms. We can work on more cutscenes. So we could work on that cutscene for saving the adventure. So when you defeat the boar, we need to have a cutscene play, which actually I think is a new type of cutscene that we don't really have yet. The idea of like a once combat ends, trigger a cutscene and have people start having dialogue. That'll be potentially some new code. And then we also want to look at the skill tree stuff. Let's start with the skill tree stuff. So if we go look in here, right now, when we load up the, let's go 2D, let's load up the slash ability, because you will have used it a little bit. I expect that you should be able to pick up strength and maybe like a health upgrade, but right there I was able to buy like several of these nodes, which feels like too much. Like I feel like you should be able to get 2 or 3, but not like 6. And I had tuned up the experience a little bit. I think I need to tune that back down again. Yeah, let's give that a shot. So let's go take a look at the hit effect. Right now that is built directly into the hit effect. And I just have these numbers here, 40 for defeating an enemy, and 25 experience for just attacking. So just hitting an enemy gives you some XP. I think I want to check to see if I can see what the previous values were. I should have those. Let's throw on this one in the background. Actually, you know what? Let's leave the audio background music off except for in-game today. Because I kind of want to see some of the in-game audio, because that's another thing that I want to do a pass on, is just like adding more audio effects in a lot of spots. And also we've gotten some feedback that the audio for these videos could be removed because people might want to have their own audio in the background. So I'm going to try that and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I'm still looking for the hit prefabs data founded. Okay, so the original values I had before I made this change recently was 15 experience versus 25. And I expect you to fight at least the first 3 slimes, so you need to hit them twice, so you'll get 15 from one, and then 25, so you'll end up with about 40 experience. So if you kill all 3, right now it's set 100 experience needed per level. I think that probably should be a curve, but right now every level costs 100 experience, and so that means that you're going to need to kill... Well, when you kill all 3 of those slimes, you'll end up with 1 skill point, which I think is a bit low. So maybe we think about 200 divided by... I need to be doing approximately 33 per hit. Well, okay, maybe let's think about this a different way. What if we divide 200 by 3? Need to be doing about 70 per kill. So if we made this 30, if I want to give you 2, yeah, I feel like the numbers I had weren't wrong. It doesn't work as well when you have tougher slimes, because when you have tougher slimes, like the bigger green ones, you can end up hitting them 5 or 6 times and the numbers just end up being way more extreme. So maybe we leave this at 15 per hit, but we crank this up to like 50 or 55 experience per defeated hit. So you should only get one of these, because one of these happens if the enemy's defeated and the other one happens if they're not defeated. I think it was vice versa to the way I said it. But yeah, so for the little slimes, you'll end up hitting them, getting 15 experience, and then you hit again and you'll get 55. So then you'll get the 70 I'm looking for. And then when you hit the next slime, you'll get 15 and go to 85. But when you defeat it, yeah, the weird thing about this is I'm not teaching you that it's coming from just hits, but I think that's okay for now. It's only going to ever trigger in this setup on the death of the mini slimes. But by defeating the 2 slimes as you make your way around, you'll end up with the amount of experience I'm expecting you to have. We could also... the other way we could go about this is we could add a slime to this room, because right now, if we take the shortcut through the adventurer area, we'll have to fight the boar, and then we'll get up into this crossroads area, which I don't have any fighting in, which I think I want to keep. But if I'm going this way, it's 2 rooms in a row with no combat. So maybe we add a fight here. And we'll do a big slime as a bit of more of a challenge at this point. Now, if we place this here, I think the player can't avoid this slime. Now, the combat behavior of this enemy doesn't mean that it can be very threatening, because the player can just run away from it. But for the time being, this is at least a good place for it, because you won't be able to avoid it when you're walking through this room, because if you, yeah, no matter how you go about this, the enemy will be revealing, and then, or the enemy will be revealed. And then I think I want to reduce the patrol points down to 2, and we'll have it patrol once the map has been revealed between 6, 5, and let's say 10, 8. So it'll just walk back and forth here along this kind of corner. Yeah, let's try that. We need to make sure this is under the room object in order for my import stuff to work correctly. Okay, and then if that's the case, that enemy will require a fair amount of attacks. Maybe rather than changing these experience numbers, which I don't know what that's fully going to do, let's put these back to what they were. Okay. And then we'll have to play through again to see how that's feeling. We can technically start here in this room and skip past the first little bit, because we don't need to see the first cutscene or walking around the first slime. We can just grab the sword and then fight our way forward. And then we'll see how many skill points we end up with after we defeat the big slime. Hopefully around 3 is what I'm hoping for. But I'm not really doing the math. I'm kind of just deciding. I'm also going to fix that. I don't know which VO I want to use for that cutscene, but it looks like I duplicated some old ones. And because I just duplicated the dialogue entry a couple of times, it ends up using the same one. And I'm just going to clean up any audio issues like that as we're going through today as well. So this is in the no longer in the forest area. Now this is technically called the woods. And this is the G8. It is not here. Is that because we copied this from a different section? I'm going to guess we stole this cutscene from W01 sword pickup. Yeah. So I want to move this and potentially rename it to be more accurate. So let's do that as well while we're here. Folders, G8, and then we're going to copy sword pickup. We're going to paste that in here. We're going to change these all need addressable IDs. Yes. The addressable ID for this will be same format as this. So it'll be not trapped adventurer, but sword pickup. And it will be in woods room G8. And that will also be the addressable ID. Yes. Is how we've gone about setting this up. And then this cutscene ID is going to similarly be set up here to be sword pickup dialogue, but with the correct folder and room. And then that will be what gets used here. And then this dialogue is where that VO is getting played from. So for the time being, we're just going to remove the audio responses until I go through and figure out which VO pieces I want to add there. Cool. And then this interact needs to trigger not Forest W01, but Woods G8 sword pickup. And then the last thing we need to do, which I want to get to be automatic at some point, is we need to parse our cutscenes, because that's going to convert all of these scriptable objects, or not convert, but it's going to reference all of these scriptable objects inside of a JSON file, which is going to be used to reference and find the scriptable objects. So we're just going to parse through the folder, essentially, find any new scriptable objects, aka the one we just set up, and add it to our data structures. So we should still be able to come in here. We should still be able to do this pickup, but there shouldn't be any VO for the time being. Cool. Could be interesting to add a bit of audio to the actual Omni Weapon Absorb. but I don't know how annoying that's going to be to do on stream. Oh, that's a bug that I have not thought about in a while. When you attack an enemy and you deal damage to them, if they die that turn, sometimes the damage, like for the first one, ended up somewhere over here. This one was fine. I think that's because it uses the last position of the hit effect. Okay, and then this room should have a new slime here, which is a big one. Which we end up defeating, but just barely. And after all those hits and the death kill, we end up leveling up to level 3. So that means we'll have 2 skill points now. Okay. And then we could go down, get the mace, but I'm more curious to see if we finish getting the mace and we were to go up this way and fight another slime. Could we get another level? I don't think so, because we just gained one. Oh, maybe actually, because we get a number of hits in before they finally take us out. Yeah, but we don't gain another level, but we're probably pretty close. So on the start of the next run, we would get a level almost instantly. So then here we'd be able to buy 1 point of strength and 5 points of health. Okay. Let's see about fixing a couple of bugs. Bug number 1, I'd like to see about changing it so that when we start a new run, the health is actually correct. Because when we bought that health upgrade on the first one, not there because I didn't start a new run, but if I had have started a new run, we would have saw that my health was not resetting properly. Let's take a look at the time system. That's going to be one of the backend managers. I think clock manager. This is going to be the best spot to look. I also want to half the amount of time we're giving you. Maybe not half. Let's do 300 to start and see how that's feeling. And then in here, there's a reset clock to maximum time. When does this get called? When we start a run. Okay. At the same time when we start a run, we should update the health values. Because right now we're doing it at the end. We should be doing it at the start. I'm not going to remove it here, but this is why we're not getting our health set to our new maximum once we've bought some skills and then start a new run. So that should fix that problem. I want to fix this platform. I think I might want to move this over to here. Yeah. Because I feel like it feels weird to have to run so far once the map is already revealed on that second run. So I think I want to have the bridge be created here, and then you can run across and fight the boar. Yeah, let's give that a shot. So if that's the case, right now this is a custom prop that we're adding. By default, it's a pit. And is it the cutscene for Stump Bridge? Is this what's turning on and making certain tiles walkable? It is. It's making these two walkable. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to make it so this is the area where it becomes walkable. And we'll see how this feels. I think it's better position. If we need to like bring the river in so it's still only one across instead of two across, we can also make that change. But we're going to just tweak this to be 10, 6, 11, 6, and we'll add one more entry for the actual tile that the tree is on, or the stump. And then here, these are decal tests. I'm going to leave these, and I'm going to ask Drixie to replace them at some point. But we're going to set these to be this test decal for now. We're going to make it a decal. We're going to have it have 5 pixels up, it looks like. And then if I do custom, how do I have it so this shows more information? There's a way to make it so that's what the problem is. I need advanced parameters to be visible. This is another bug. We're going to just work through these things. There's a bunch of little bothersome issues, and today we're just going to kind of figure out what's causing some pain points, and we're going to just work through them. There's not one particular problem that we're working to solve, one overarching thing that I can say, here's the narrative of what today's game dev work is. It's instead just solving whatever comes up. So we're going to continue down this tangent, and we're going to take a look at the prop editor, prop tile editor. And in here, this is where we, depending on whether or not we're showing metadata, we use the default inspector or we use our custom version. I want to have another version in here that is, if we're not showing metadata, I also want a tick box for the property advanced parameters, which should be as easy as copying this chunk I grabbed here, putting that in there, putting this into a new one, which is a new variable, which is going to be show advanced parameters, and then property field. And that should be enough for us to get that tick box always showing. It's going to flip where I placed it, though. I'm going to want to change it. Yeah, so now it's below. Now it's above. Okay, so we just want to move it in that section up a little bit. It'll still be below generated lock. Yeah, things move around a fair amount, but we can always see the advanced parameter button, which is what I keep missing every so often, where I'm like, how do I get the entity ID again? So if we come back over to this one and we add that in here as the entity that we want to show, does it need a flag as well? It doesn't look like it. Okay. So we'll just have that be one of the entity IDs, but we will need a second one as well for this setup. So we'll make this a decal as well, set its pixel height to 5. We'll change its texture to be the decal one. We'll turn on advanced parameters, and we'll give this an entity ID of fallen stump bridge 2 in this situation. Sure. And then in here, we'll have it toggle on both of the bridges. And then we will just remove the log for the time being. I think the easiest way to do that is to remove its entity ID. What's causing this to be off by default? Like, why does this not show all the time? Oh, this is another thing we need to fix. There is a required flag that needs to be set in order for this to appear, and it'll not spawn by default. but that can only be seen inside the metadata because this system here isn't able to show lists. Oh, that's frustrating. Okay, so this needs to be completed. And same thing with this one, show metadata. So I wouldn't have remembered that if I hadn't have thought about the fact that I don't know why this isn't always appearing. Okay, and then we will change this required flag to like active, which I think will never be set to anything. And then that should make it so this one isn't being used anymore. I'm going to leave it mostly for reference, but we'll give this a try. Okay, there it is. They are still rendering. That is because there's two versions of them. I failed to remove the default versions. I added a custom prop version, but I did not remove this one here in the kind of default settings. Okay. Yeah, I like the framing of that more too. Okay, so then if we want to test this, this interact has a requirement, which is in the interact data here, mace pickup must be set to complete. So we can fix that in our debug settings for our flag overrides, and we can set that flag to completed so that it will think we have the mace. Even though we don't have the actual ability, it doesn't actually use the ability, it just needs that flag to be set in order for the interact to work. And that does work. In this situation, we don't have any attacks in this kind of debug state, though. All right, so that has moved the interact to the left, and we're now using these decals instead of this fallen log prop that I'd also kind of set up as a test, but I don't like as much as the decals. So that is all working. We're going to remove the mace pickup complete debug because I don't want that interfering with other stuff right now. Cool. So didn't end up removing these pieces, but ended up integrating them into the interact cutscene that we have. We've got this pickup. We move around here. We end up getting 3 skill points by the time we end up getting into this room. I guess the question I want to ask now is, how does 300 seconds versus 480 seconds, or turns maybe is a better way to describe it, how far can I get on that first run before I run out of time? Because I want to be somewhat generous and let the player kind of explore a little bit. But I do think it's also okay if the player ends up like running out of time. We did not get that time set up. Did I not save that file? We had went into the clock manager. I never actually hit save in here. Okay. I want to see what 300 turns feels like. And I'm going to be a little bit more like wandery and less explore every single spot, or sorry, more explore every single spot and less beeline it directly to the end. We'll see what kind of impact that makes. Okay, so we get through here. I'm going to be like, oh, I want to make sure I fill in every tile before leaving. We head into the next room. Might try and go this way. We end up not being able to see that slime. Again, I'm filling in as many tiles as I can just because I don't want to leave anything undiscovered. Maybe I'm the type of player who's looking for secrets, looking around a bunch, exploring before heading off. There's also a bug there where the character is sliding. That's interesting. I'm curious what's going on there. When leaving, the character slides off screen, so they're going back to the idle and not playing the walk correctly. But it works there, so it's not a consistent bug. We pick up the weapon. We gain slash. That's the other thing I'm thinking about. I'm going to do it quick before I forget again. I want to go into this sword pickup and I want to remove unlocking defend for the time being. That was more of a debug type thing. I'm not going to restart though. Oh, and I want to make sure I'm exploring every tile, so we do that. Cool. Move forward. Yeah, there's that text issue again. The 14 appeared here rather than there, and I'm assuming that was the center of the screen. So by the time when the enemy dies, the timing is working out where the enemy doesn't exist anymore by the time we want to align the text to it, I think. That's going to be a fun bug to try and solve. I think if I'm exploring every tile, I might run out of time before I actually get to the mace right now. This combat also takes up a fair amount of effort as well. That's pretty good. Oh shoot, I hit defend instead of interact. Oh, which didn't auto end it. It's only on movement that we end the round. That has not been a bug I've noticed because defend is the first ability that doesn't require a target. Huh. I don't even think I updated this last week. Is this where I want to do this? I'm just going to make a list of bugs. I just need to put it down somewhere. Where's a block of text? Oh, this is just an example block of text. I feel like there's a version of this that comes with multiple. I guess it is just this one. I'm just going to write down bugs. I'm just going to put this down somewhere. So we're seeing issues with the hit notification text fails to align on enemy death. Walking off screen sometimes plays idle instead of walk. Anim. Defend ability does not properly end a run when out of time. Okay, and then reflect. Is that what? Oh, I was like, why did I say the word reflect? Because that's the text that appears when we click on stuff. Skill tree icons, nodes. Purchasable versus not purchasable. Looks identical. Looks the same. Is there a better way to say that? Purchasable, unlockable versus sure, something like that. Right. So yeah, and then we ended up with 2 points, but I do think that after that second slime combat, we're pretty close to being able to update or upgrade Slash again. With the new chapter system, I don't even know if we need checkpoints anymore, is something I've also been thinking about. Alright. Health is now updating correctly. So the first time through here, we didn't have an item, so we would have just died to this slime. But now we were never hit during that fight? That's interesting. And then we never actually picked up the mace. So this is a kind of a test of a run. This is kind of a test of a run where we failed, quote unquote. And with the strength upgrades, we're now doing enough damage. With 1 point of strength, we're still taking 2 hits, but we're much closer to one-shotting a slime. Yeah, and then we're at level 5 now, so we've gained 2 more skill points on this run. And the enemy only gets 1 attack off with us having this amount of strength. Cool. And this time we got here way faster, partly because combat required a few less turns, but also because I wasn't exploring as much. So there's a fairly wide margin just based off of... Well, I guess technically for F7 we also didn't walk all the way around the slime. We walked through and fought it, which also probably saved us a good chunk of time as well. So at this point the player would be like, okay, I've got this mace, what do I do with it? Maybe that's what I'm hopeful for. I don't know if the player would actually think to use the mace at all. I think you'd probably just continue exploring. You might go up this way next. Could you defeat both of these slimes? I think you can, because they only get one hit in. Yeah, 25 health. Yeah, and you'd run out of time shortly after this. Okay, so you'd maybe be able to get a little bit into the next room before you'd run out of time. And there isn't a next room yet set up, so let's just debug and the run. Now we could go in, we could buy 2 points of strength, which might be a little overkill, and another one here, so that's 3 more points of strength, which is going to be pretty massive. And then a point of speed, which currently doesn't do anything. And then we didn't have any skill points in Bash because I'm just not using it. I'm only using Slash, which is a problem in and of itself I need to solve. There needs to be more ebb and flow. The whole point of like the turn-based like action system is supposed to give some reason to use one over the other. But it's just not quite working out that way. Yeah, we didn't get hit there by that enemy. He did take a turn. I assume that was a miss. So on the previous run, we managed to kill these 2 slimes and get to the end of this room with 30 turns remaining. Yeah, now we get here with essentially six times as much turns remaining. Okay. We have not opened up Pure Ref in a while. I think this is a moment where I want Pure Ref. I don't even think most of this is relevant. This is all from last December. I will organize that later. For now, we're just going to grab this corner. And we're going to keep track of the amount of time that we had at the end of this run, because I'm probably going to want to remember that. So here, note, run, third run directly, maybe better to say with shortcut. Okay. It's the control N for a new note. Second run without shortcut. And then I don't have a photo for this, but I'm just going to say that that was 30 turns remaining. Hopefully that'll help me remember. Okay. So at this point, what is the time it takes me to walk between, like, say, this is a pretty large room. We have to walk essentially the whole diagonal way across it. And we get to here with 46, so about 25 turns to cross a room, with some amount being required for combat. That means that with 3 hours of turns, which is really 180, with 180 turns remaining, we could likely get through 6 more rooms before we would run out of time at this point. It's actually more than I thought we'd be able to get to. So the question is there a way for us to set up another shortcut such that we can save time? Because I think we're going to keep wanting to have shortcuts similar to the one that we have in the river, so that like we can keep having each new run feel like the player is not having to retrace as much old ground, but have almost like this sense of like accomplishment of like, oh, I'm able to get further faster each time I do a new run because of some of the setup I've done. So this one here cuts out 3 rooms, technically 4 if you're going north, 3 rooms if you're heading to H6 for that shortcut. The other option is we continue to have H6 be a one-directional shortcut, so we could have it so instead of, I was thinking of having the log on this side. I mean, realistically, I've been going back and forth between the 2 ideas of which side the shortcut should be on. But if we had the shortcut on that side, then we could have it so you have to navigate through like another little loop to be able to gain access to a shortcut here, so that you can skip 4 or 5 rooms north and then just go directly this way in a later run. And then the final run, which I don't really fully understand what that's going to be, would be a little bit of heading up, going to this crossroads, going this way, doing something over here, and then backtracking a bit to the actual dungeon on the left. Okay. That backtrack scares me a little bit. Okay, I've got some ideas. Let's start filling in some blanks. Again, put pen to paper. That's the goal here. We're going to just do some stuff. And maybe it's not the right direction, but I just need to continue to build. And we will rework if we need to rework. Where's the map tool gone? Here it is. Okay, so from this tile, we're going to, I think I want to change this H6 one to actually go have an exit here. Well, maybe we don't need that actually. Let's work on H5. Let's come into here. So we're going to exit on this spot. I'm going to go grab the WG5 map. We're going to open that in VS Code here. Grab that. We're going to copy that into our kind of Excel map editor that we've been using. So we know that we're going to exit from the room here. So the floor will enter in on this side. The question is where we go from here. Do we have a good reference or version of this somewhere in here? Map layout? Yes. Okay. So right now we go first room, avoid the slime, trapped adventurer, pick up the sword, fight, crossroads, and then you can go up here. And it looks like I was unsure about what I wanted to do, but I was thinking I might have you come in here. Well, we definitely have it set up right now where you exit from this G5 room and you go to this one. There is no north exit at this time. So what we could do is we could have this room head up, head into this spot of H4, and then come back down. Somewhere like there. And so the player ends up working from this spot up to this area, shortcuts across to the crossroads. They can head north and then work their way over to here, head down, and if they take this left, they'll be able to create another shortcut here, which allows them to cut these 5 maps out, and then on a future run, they can go from here to here to here to here to here and get to this room in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms, instead of having to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My problem with this is I kind of like instead having the shortcut this way so that you can go from here and maybe knock a stump down. So you get the bash ability from saving the adventurer. You figure out how to use it here in order to be able to try and save them. And then from this spot, you're able to then knock a bridge over and go this way. The nice thing about having it be that the bridge is on this side is the game becomes more open and less linear. We don't have as much of a like, oh, you have to go north and follow this like 1, 2, 3, 4 linear path. Instead, you can go this way and maybe come up to this direction, or you can come up here. We could maybe even be nicer and even have like a path between these 2 tiles. And so like it just becomes way more open. You could do something like this, and the player gets to decide in which way they want to tackle this area. It's just a question of like, do we want it to be super open, or do we want it to be a very linear type experience with a series of shortcuts that allow you to like on future runs get further faster? And then I don't know if this room is the end, but I think at the end is in this direction. The final goal, I think, goes this way. So you might be able to go like 1 or 2 more rooms like north and left from here. But you'll find a point where it's like, you can't go any further. I keep saying I want to just put pen to paper and just figure it out, but I feel like I do need to make a decision on this. Because the way that I build these next few rooms, they're very different layouts depending on whether or not I'm doing a linear progression through this area that you eventually get to shortcut and bypass, or if I'm doing a very open-ended, like, hey, you can either go, this way or this way, and there's a bit of a puzzle to solve in here of like what needs to be accomplished, but the player can kind of come at it from multiple different directions. And depending on which way you come in, essentially there'll be different experiences because of the time mechanic. We can have certain events that you will only be able to get to this room, for example, in time if you go directly north from the crossroads and then into here. Meanwhile, if you take the long route around then you'll end up being too slow and that event might be already over. Yeah, that feels like the open-ended version with like different events depending on which way you go seems more interesting. Okay. All right, let's play. Let's try stuff. Let's actually work not on H5, but let's work on I6. Yeah. So from here, we're going to exit on this side. Let's grab this one instead. Copy this. Paste it into here for reference. And then we're going to grab this floor. We'll exit here. And the question is, where are we going from here? I think I definitely want to have some sort of way up north. I don't know if I want to go to the right. And I think we probably want to have some direction south, but maybe it's not something you can do right away. Okay, let's assume that we go up north from here, somewhere around this spot. And maybe we can exit here on this bottom right section. Then this needs to be an area that at the minimum is going to need to do something like that. Yeah, we could do something like this. Just going to try and remove some of the squareness from some of this before we start adding props. Sure. Center. Do some stones, some grass, some more trees here, some more trees here. And then we're just going to put some bush and stone tiles along the bottom. And then I think I have to do the same thing here. We're just going to put in a bunch of bees. And then just add some stones sporadically, trying to make this a bit random feeling. Cool, that should be good enough. So then we'll download that as a TSV into our TSV folder. And we're naming this I6. And then weirdly, I think I'm going to do lowercase I, because otherwise it's going to be confusing to keep track of this. Then we can copy this room, so we can save as scene. Actually, what's even easier is to just copy the whole scene, I think. So select asset, copy, name this I. Oh God, what did I do? Why is that one gray? Is that because it's selected? I've never noticed that before. No. Why is that one grayed out? What did I do? What hotkey did I hit to make that, like... It still loads fine. Alright, I'm just going to ignore it. We're going to load this one. We're going to generate from TSV. Oh, technically we need to clear props and then generate TSV to have this work correctly. And that is a version of the map. Cool. Then we can add a few slimes in here. We'll need to figure out patrol paths for them. And then this tile set can be shifted over to here. And it will want to exit out to this will be I7. And these ones are going to want to be transitioning to H6. Okay, cool. And then same thing here. And then we need to turn on the west entrances. I keep instinctually putting them in the same spot. I feel like that's probably fine. But the fact that I turned these on and they were already centered means that the last room I copied before this one had them in the same position, which is going to happen. There's not that many possibilities for where they can be. And then last thing we want to do here is we want to change this so that the spawn tile it uses by default will be this South 01. And that should be enough. What do I want to do for patrols here? Maybe this slime walks back and forth to like 13.8. And then up from there to like 9.10. So just kind of going back and forth here. And then this slime can instead go up to 10.11 and then back down to 14.14. And then it doesn't need these other two. Okay, did this one also have 4? No. Cool, and we should be able to run that. Oh, not quite. 2 more steps that I would like to automate, but are not automated yet. We need to make sure that inside the room itself, I run overwrite work in progress texture. And then in here, I need to run the tool that will generate a floor texture for the ground. I don't have a weapon. Alright, well, let's just disable the enemies for now. Save, try again. And I should be able to walk out of this map and back over onto the H6 one. Yeah, I still don't like the position of that where it's being covered by the clock. Yeah, now we're on this side of H6. Ooh, and it generated the button for it automatically too. Cool. That tech is working. Missed a tile here. This should be something. And then how'd I do on having them clip a little bit, but not too bad. This one's not great. These two. Where did I mess that up to? I couldn't quite remember how this works. Yeah, okay. Can't have these ones be the same or be opposites, it looks like. Diagonal. Oh no, I'm not looking at this correctly. I think there's one more row I haven't revealed. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong spot. Okay, I was right. It is these two. They can't be the same diagonally. That's my problem. So this can just be CT instead. And then I missed placing something here. Let's do that one. And everything else looks fine. Okay, so we'll re-download that. Replace I6. And then we should be able to just regenerate the room. I think I won't need to clear the props. That looks fine. And then just going to overwrite the texture because we did add an extra tile for that prop. Okay. Cool. So then we run into my problem, which is like, how do we know, like as a player, what is this room for? Like, what am I teaching the player in this moment? Like, we can have a couple more slimes, but like, in a lot of ways, these first few rooms are very planned out. We're avoiding the slime. We're fighting along the river edge, but we're kind of tutorializing what should be the player's primary goal, which I don't think is concrete enough yet, but it is save the adventurer. Then we get a weapon, and then we teach fighting one single slime. Then we have a couple of extra slimes. Then we get a bigger enemy that's a little more difficult, which should have a little bit more advanced behaviors. Right now it's not set up the way I want, but you get a little more difficult enemy. We kind of hit a crossroads, which is meant to just be like a central pivot point for most of the rest of the runs, so it's okay that this one's just basically just 4 exits and there's not a lot else in here. I may add some signage to like you know, make it even more feel like the crossroads, like left to the dungeon, north for the path to town, something that like really highlights that. So like each of these have a purpose of like teaching combat or teaching the mechanics of the time stuff. But like, what is this one for? Like, what are we getting out of... What are we getting out of continuing to explore? And I think that's the primary problem I'm running into, is I'm not sure what to do. Like, what is the interesting thing that I get to when I come to this room? Like, we can put 2 green slimes in here, but then these 2 rooms both have, like, their only defining feature is 2 green slimes. Like, that's the only thing in them. There's no items, there's no pickups, there's no additional NPCs. Like, we could put, like, another goddess statue in here, maybe? And then I've been thinking about maybe having the goddess statues be some form of shortcuts in some situations if we feel we need to pull that lever from, like, a design standpoint. Like, do we need to have it so that when I eventually want you to do the final run, you're going to need to come in here, save this adventurer. There'll be maybe another adventurer over here you have to save, another adventurer up here you have to save, and then you have to head back over to the dungeon. Like, maybe having a goddess statue here that lets me teleport from here to, like, I don't know, way over here. Assuming that I have to, you know, navigate from here and from here. If there was a, like, statue here, and if I could use the goddess's power to teleport from this room to this room, then this room would have some value that makes it different. But I feel like I'm just, like, stretching to try and make this work. Okay. Let's try and come at this from a different angle, because I don't think I'm making any progress. Let's look at... Let's look at adding back in the slimes. Well, you know, even better, we're going to come into here. Let's start here. Let's grab the sword. Because I think part of the problem is also combat isn't escalating correctly either. So maybe we should tackle understanding that problem, and then maybe that'll inform the decisions we make towards building out the rest of the chapter. Okay, so we come up to this first enemy slime here, and it is currently doing a 5 charge red like crystal attack, which is basically a heavy hit. And we only have slash, which I think is fine. What I need is better tools for testing, because what okay, let's set up this as a test room. Okay, let's assume we're here with this setup. Is there any way for me to configure to start with the abilities? If we go to unit persistent data in here, do we have a list of starting abilities that the player begins with? No. Let's take a look at how we add the new abilities. There's a sequence step for it, so it can't be that complicated. It must be pretty standalone. Sequence step. Unlock ability sequence step. So this gets an ability by its ID and adds it to the persistent data. So what does this function call do? It just takes an int ID. Okay, so if we do the constructor in here, how badly would this break? What is this doing? This needs the data entry. When is this called? Yeah, as part of the initialization. I think it should be here. This looks like the old call I used to use. We just don't have any default ones right now. List of default IDs. So if I know what the ability's name is, which I believe is just slash and bash, if we just hook this up in here, we should just start with slash and bash by default. We do not have the abilities. Did we have an error? We did have 2 errors, but those were related to a manual error that I need to turn off. Okay, let's add a breakpoint in here and see what's happening when we do this. Because it's possible we're adding the abilities, but we're not unlocking the tutorial. Yeah, it's finding them, and it's adding them to the unlockability list. The UI just isn't on right now. So I think we just need to turn on that flag, which is going to be part of the sword pickup. Ability tutorial complete. We just need to set that flag, and I think we should be able to see our UI. And it should show us having both abilities unlocked. I'm just going to disable that breakpoint. It does not show. Okay. So then what is default not doing? That add is probably is the equip call. Yeah, it's not equipping it. This is unlocked. Equipping, check for alternate unlocks, which we're not really doing anymore. This ID goes into this list. This enumerated, yeah, so this should be the same. Okay. Let's see if adding just the equip call to the default list fixes it. And then the other thing I'm going to want to be able to control is what our starting stats are. Yeah, so we have slash and bash by default now. All right. Flag overrides scriptable object. Where is this being used? Via singleton that keeps track of the flags and the debugging. And oh, I didn't even know if I had this. I can just hit backslash and it'll show me all of my flags. Okay, cool. And is this just used? Yeah, this singleton just exists so that other things can access it. Okay, this is a bit hacky, but I see what I've done. Right, and this only happens in the Unity editor, which is smart. Okay, so then if I want to do something similar, this is inside of, I assume, the init file. It is. Let's copy this and bring this over to the back end. And similarly, as part of the init for this one, let us add the information I'm going to rename this, I think, at some point, but for today, we're just going to slam a new object in here, which is going to be, you know what, it's not even going to be inside, it's going to be the same object, but instead of just having a list of required flags, we're going to add a list of string default ability IDs. And for now, that can be empty, and I will add those manually. And then what we need to have a public, what is the data structure that we use for setting the persistent data? There is no data structure currently. Yeah, okay. We just manually set the values on the constructor, and it's based off these stat values. Okay. So we don't really have a good data structure for a list of default stats. What I really want, I guess technically, is the ability to set certain nodes as purchased by default. Because that's really what's setting the stats, is inside of here. We're saying that this node is unlocked. What does base unlock do? It sets it to unlocked as true. But save load doesn't do that, right? Save load. Okay. So save load is just saving the player state and getting the player state and putting it back together again. Which has a list of all the nodes and which ones have been unlocked. And then it re-unlocks it. Interesting. Okay, so these default stats never change. We never actually save out the player's current stats. We simply save out which nodes have been unlocked, and then when we load the game, we reload or re-unlock all of those nodes. Yeah, so I kind of want some sort of way of setting specific nodes to unlocked. Does this have a custom editor yet? It does not. Yeah, the tech I want here is more complicated than what we currently have set up. So I can at the very least set up this part so that we loop through the list of IDs. We do IDs.add by utility, this thing, and this is string ID. And then we're gonna hash that and add it to this list. And then this list of IDs is what we unlock by default. But if we want to set specific nodes to unlocked by default, that's going to require a much larger problem. Yeah. Because we would want to go through and have... I think this is doable. There's a hacky way to do this for now. So this gets called here. This is called externally when we load the states. Unit state, ability spec states. Does this get constructed when we create the defaults? If we go back to here, when we make the defaults, is this constructing an ability spec? It is. And then that ability spec internally will generate all of the actual node structures. And then we add all those nodes. But if we did node dot is unlocked, or more accurately dot unlock, oh my goodness, unlock true, that would unlock that node. So we just need some way of setting which nodes we want to unlock versus which nodes we don't want to unlock. And that doesn't have to be done here. We just need to access that ability spec. And then we would just need a function that just says public void debug unlock node. And then we would just need to give it an ID essentially. The problem is none of these nodes are really like indexed in a way that makes it easy to access them. But if I could find a way to just say, hey, I want to set this one by index, okay. The problem is, how do I get a specific ability spec? Can I access them? Unlocked ability specs. But I can't just, like, I can equip one, but I can't just say, hey, I want a specific one. I can't just get a specific one. That can't be true though, because our UI clearly modifies these things and like gets all the nodes. So like, oh, but that's probably done through a bit of referential magic. Yeah, we don't get the specific one probably. We probably just loop through all of them. Yeah, the skill menu just loops through all of them and makes a button for each one. But realistically, we could do something similar here where after we've created all the default ones, we could just go through Where was that located to? What was the... This is inside the ability specs. Yeah, we still have a problem of... Yeah, there's so many levels deep. Yeah, here we're getting a list of unlocked specs, which is just this. Okay, no, I'm just a little lost. Okay, so if we do that, we're going to get a list of all the ability specs here. And then from here, we can do debug unlock node with specific indices. So if instead this was a string for the ID and then a list of integers, nodes to unlock. This isn't going to be super helpful, but if we do that, these need to be public. And then here we're looping through all of them again. But we're going to check if the ability spec ability ID is equal to this value. Then we're going to loop through one more time through each of the integer indexes in nodes to unlock. And this would be the index I want to unlock. Okay. This probably needs to be set to be serializable in order for this to work. What else is going to be the complaints? Or is it just going to work? No other complaints. Yeah, and if I do list here too, I open this up and I do slash and I do bash, and then we go take a look at the skill screen and we look at the nodes. They should have indices that hopefully should line up. So this is indice 0, indice 1, into C3 and into C4. So this is the problem, is I'm going to have to look at these grids and figure them out if I want to debug set them. It'd be nicer if there was some way to parse this information, because it is in the JSON, and show it inside of the scriptable object. But that's going to require building a custom editor, and I don't even know if this is what I want, or if this will work. So let's just get it, see if it functions with a fair amount of overhead first before we optimize the tool. So where'd the first run go? So that's somewhere here. First run. Okay, so if we come into here and we give this nodes to unlock, and I'm saying I want to unlock this node, which is node 3 and node 4. 3 and 4. Save that. If we run the game, the question is, does it properly unlock those nodes on a fresh new run? It does look like it, because we start it with the incorrect amount of health, because that's probably after we had done the initialization. We can also check by ending the run and then going to the skill tree, and they should in theory be unlocked similar to if we had loaded a save file. Except, oh, weird. I could still walk across that. But yeah, they are unlocked, and we were loading from a fresh run. Okay, was there any errors beyond the standard refresh bar? No. Okay. Cool. So this lets me test the game in specific states. So I can say, hey, I expected you to do a run in which you unlocked the first 3 nodes of Slash and you got Bash, but you haven't unlocked anything further. And this would be like after a first run state. I would expect you to be in a similar kind of situation, and these would be the skills you'd have and about the quality of damage that you would be doing. We still have the combo system in place. I think I want to disable that for now, because I just don't know if we're going to use it. That's going to be on the specific enemies. So if we look at this enemy, if I get rid of a combo meter, I don't know if it'll... I don't know if I can get rid of the combo meter. So for now, I'm just going to set it all to special, because I don't think we ever hit the enemy, quote unquote, with special attacks. So this should be the same as disabling it without actually having to worry about whether it functions if this list is empty. Okay, that has, for the most part, as far as I know, without defend being equipped, disabled the combo system. The problem is there's basically no reason to use Bash right now. It's just worse than Slash. Can we test that? If we see here, if I bash this enemy, it's 9 damage, 8 damage. Can we take a look at the power levels of these skills? So if we take a look at Bash, it has a default power. Where does the default power live? Oh, technically power comes from somewhere else now. It's not actually built into the ability, it's in the data. Yeah, is that right? If we take a look at the ability, that's the ability templates. Actually, that should get us in the right folder at least. So if we click on this one, X out of that, and then take a look at the ability data, and then take a look at defend, shoot, bash has a power of 10, slash has a power of 10. So yeah, if we make this have a power of like 20, then they'll actually be different abilities. Because right now they're essentially doing the same thing. But one takes 4 turns and one takes 2. This is still only making it essentially equal. Because now I'm doing 18 opposed to 9, but again, it takes twice the turns. So in order for it to really be quote-unquote better, it would need to be something like 30, because then it's 3 times the damage, but for 4 turns. So it will be significantly more impactful, but you have to wait on it. But still not enough to outright kill the enemy. So it's like getting 3 slashes in... I don't think that actually matters, though. Like, the thing that was more interesting was giving the player defend. Which I think I should be able to do like this. And we should start the run with defend now. So we'll have all 3 abilities. But it was significantly more interesting asking the player to defend attacks, because we could get into situations like here where I could defend the enemy, parry, and then do a better hit. And now in this situation, I feel like what I want is for the player to make the decision to do bash, because you're going to do more damage. And like, because I played quote unquote skillfully, I'm able to like kill the enemy without taking any damage. I'm just not sure if the combat system is like working without the defend ability. And if that's like, I think it works okay with just slash on the little slimes, because you're just like trading blows until they die, and that's fine. But when it comes to trying to create like tactical experiences with like the one-on-one combat, I feel like the defend is kind of necessary in order to like create moments where I'm actually making decisions about which abilities I'm using and why. Like there, even just adding the bash, or adding, sorry, the enemy's 2-hit attack in means that now I'm like, okay, I'm going to defend, but at this point he's stunned for a turn, but I don't know what he's going to use next. So I could do slash, but now I'm not going to be able to defend that hit. So I still can, but I can't parry it. And then he's attacking again. So again, I can keep trying to defend, but if he keeps choosing green, which it looks like he is, I'm not winning. But then as soon as he chooses red, I go faster, so I can do a bash before him, which allows me to do enough damage to kill him, whereas if I did 2 slashes, it wouldn't have been enough to kill, and I would have gotten hit. But I could have still done a slash and then a defend, and it would have been, quote-unquote, almost safer, I guess? I don't know. It feels like I'm close to having something, but it feels like defend is the linchpin that's required for this to function. It feels like defend is the linchpin that's required for this to function. It feels like defend is the linchpin that is required for this to function. Is that the solution? What if here we can get the mace and we can come in on a new run and we can make this bridge, but if we do that, potentially the boar is too difficult to win the battle against, so we can try to save the adventurer once we have bash, but bash isn't enough to deal with the boar. Maybe the boar is where defend starts to shine, because we're not dealing with little slimes, we're dealing with enemies that require tactical, like, ability usage. You can't just, bash and slash your way to get past them. Sure. So then, if I do a run where I go all the way around, I get the mace, I come back in, I try to immediately save the adventurer, I die to the slime, that's going to feel bad, but depending on how we frame it, maybe it could work. And then the goal becomes not to go here directly, but instead to go maybe use bash to get to this room, or to go north up into this room and try and gain access to wherever the shield is hidden. And then chapter 1 is about using bash, slash, and defend to defeat the boars and more difficult enemies. And then saving this adventurer becomes the linchpin moment. We may still want to save other adventurers. That was something I was still considering. Like, there's an adventure you have to save here, an adventure you have to save here. However, these maps end up being laid out. And then once you've saved all 3 adventurers, you head to the dungeon. And with all 3 of them, like, together again, the adventuring party, like, says, okay, we can head into the dungeon, and you can be our 4th member because you helped each of us, reunite after being separated in the forest. But maybe this is the linchpin moment where you have to get the mace from their death, and maybe somewhere else you need to get defend. Yeah, maybe there's more to this. So it does mean that we'll still end up going this way. So this shortcut will take a little while to unlock. Like, because even though you'll be able to make the bridge across, you won't necessarily be able to escape the boar. Interesting. We're at time. As usual, we're going to stream from 2 to 4. It's 4 o'clock PST now. We're going to take a break for 2 hours. I'm going to go have some dinner, and then we'll be back from 2 to 6 with some more game dev. And I will continue thinking about some of this stuff, and maybe this will inform what some of these other maps and what some of the other cutscenes we need are. For now, though, this will be Tolly signing out. I'll see you folks in 2 hours. For now, it'll be... But I'm time looping. For now, this is Tolly signing out. Later, folks.